Welcome to the Sci-Fi Center, the place to be, where comic books and wrestling collide magically. Movies, TV shows, and pop culture we share. Get ready to rock, we're here to take you there. From superheroes to aliens in outer space, we've got the latest news and reviews in our embrace. Turn on your screen, let the neon lights glow. We'll take you back to the 80s. Let's rock and roll. Sci-Fi Center, where the legends come alive. Get ready to geek out, let your imagination fly. We're diving into the past with a touch of modern flair. Sci-Fi Center, the ultimate pop culture lair.
Happy Friday. Welcome to the weekend. Well, at least the beginning of it. This is probably the first of a few times you will see my face over the next 3 to 4 days. Tonight it is a Midnight Express. And as promised, we were asking last night what we wanted to talk about, and we wanted to bring back our, list type of thing. So tonight is going to be the top 5 remakes. All of mine are science fiction, horror, fantasy. I don't really care about any other type of remakes. But you guys are welcome to bring up yours. Some of these are remakes in name only because they have the same title. But if some of these remakes have a source material that can be interpreted a different way in a different time, that is not necessarily a remake. Like one of mine, I'm going to tell you is Dune. Actually, no, I didn't put Dune on there, but Dune is going to be like an example, right? It's not a remake of the 1984 film. Both of those people took the source material and did their own thing with them. As I studied this, the term remake was kind of ambiguous because The Fly, David Cronenberg's Fly, is technically a remake. That's a remake because that is from a movie, directly sourced from a movie. Whereas things like It, Dune are things that two different sets of people can basically make their own movies and not necessarily be remaking them. So going to be interesting to see what you guys come up with. Let me say hi to the chat here. Hello, Duck. Let's see, Scarface. I didn't have Scarface. I don't consider that version of Scarface much of a remake. I mean, there's almost no likenesses of the same one. Yeah, I've seen it cool. Like I said, when you're into the genre I'm into, there's a lot. And technically, John Carpenter's The Thing is on mine, but I had to struggle with that one because the short story Who Goes There is what The Thing is, but both the 1951 thing and the 1982 thing were based off of, and they both basically took the same source material and turned it in their own direction. So the 1982 thing wasn't a remake of the original thing, but I put it in my list anyway. I don't think Dune made my list. Like I said, I was struggling with this list because the difference between a remake and a reinterpretation is it's a blurred line. So I'm kind of fighting myself on this. No, I have not. I am just now hearing about this. I've never even heard of it. Hello, Ozzy. How you doing? No, the thing is my number one of overall horror movies in general. I think it's the best horror movie made, science fiction horror movie made. How you doing, Rex? See, I was on the other end of that. I like Ronald B. Moore when he was working on Star Trek, but man, when he got to Battlestar Galactica, I just felt like I was wading through a molasses trying to get that show. But you know what? I was in the minority. It lasted for 4 years. People loved it. So yeah, that's an old movie though. That's a old. When did that one come out? All right, I'm gonna try to hold out for Brad to get here if he's coming. Once I know he's not coming or coming, then I'm just gonna go ahead and do my own. So I'm just looking, seeing messages. I'm just I saw these new Fantastic Four covers for Empire magazine that I really want to grab. I'm trying to pull one up right now. Like here's one right here. That's one of them. People are like, "Well, look at Galactus. He's the size of a he could eat the planet." Now that's uh, everything I've seen from Galactus. He's generally going to be the same size Galactus is traditionally at, and that's about 28 to 48 feet, depending. He can change his size, but he chooses not to expend energy for no reason, and that would be for no reason, just for a look. So there's one of them. Oops, don't want that. I always want that. And what's another one that they had out here? Before we jump into these real quick. Here's another one. That's a cool one. There's about 3 or 4 of them. One of them is you have to actually be a subscriber to get to. So I don't subscribe to Empire magazine, but I will surely find these and put them up in the store because I think they look great. Oh, and there's Fantastic Four Pop Tarts. I'm a big Pop Tart eater, so yeah, there we go. Dude, it's all it is the blueberry flavor, and they just basically slapped Fantastic Four on it, which is fine. Like I said, I already eat Pop Tarts anyway. The blueberry is actually nasty, but I want the box. And there's a pizza. I think Little Caesars is doing a pizza box thing, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really hyped for Fantastic Four. I can't wait. Let's see. All right. Let's see. How you doing, Larry? Your top 5 are The Thing, Scarface, The Hills Have Eyes, 310 Yuma, and The Departed. The Departed was sort of, yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah. Remake Blade, nah. That won't even be a remake because once again, when you have something that is derived from a source material, it's the source material is the generator of the IP. So if we were turning around and remaking the Blade movie that was released in 1998, then that would be a remake. But they're never going to do that. They're going to come up with their own thing. So something that has source material already to it, technically, I'm guessing technically shouldn't be a remake because you're not the modern creator is not turning to that movie for inspiration. They're turning to the source material. like Denis Villeneuve turned to the source material for Dune. He didn't turn to the 1984 movie. John Carpenter turned to Who Goes There, the novel. He did not. He didn't really go into the 1952 film. All right, before we bring our co-host in, who's right on time, just wanted to let you know this week's shows are brought to you by Lionsgate and 11.
So William decided to let me come in and take over the show now, and
in theaters June 6th. If you're in another Southern Nevada area and you would like to come with me on Monday and watch a special free screening of this, keep an eye on all of our social media and come down to the Sci-Fi Center for your chance to win t-shirts, posters, and be at my side for a film of the world of John Wick Ballerina in theaters June 6th. Winners will be with me on Monday. You other people, we'll just have to wait till Friday. You know what we call them. All right. And the winners will be with me. I want to show you what the other people look like.
Yeah, he just called all of you guys losers, including the sweetest person in the world. So this is what this guy thinks of his audience.
Red's got a mean streak. I wouldn't. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna get this list started. We've already gotten a couple of people plain strawberry Pop-Tart. No frosting is it's all right, but I gotta have frosting on my Pop-Tarts, man. By the way, there are some weird flavors. There are you can get cinnamon, you can get the cinnamon ones, you can get hot fudge sundae ones, you can get there's all kinds of ones, and I'm like, dude, none of this is good for me. But man, they're fucking tasty, dude. Every time I see them at the supermarket, it's like they're calling out to me. I just hear the voices, and I walk over, and I'm like, I didn't know you guys had this flavor, damn it. But yeah, Pop-Tarts or something. Let's bring up Larry. All right, I just saw Bring Her Back. Sweet Fancy Fun. I don't think I've ever heard that term used before. That movie was really messed up and great. Incredible performance by all the actors. I just saw the movie poster for it. The movie poster is disturbing. I will probably have to wait till streaming for that one, even though I probably should see something like that movie theater. My schedule's all jammed up. All right, so you guys can go ahead, and I'm going to start with my number 5. Like I said, all mine are science fiction, horror, fantasy. Don't care about the other genres, but that should not exclude you guys. My number 5 is going to be It, 2017.
That's a good one.
This is one of the ones I kind of struggled with because of my criteria. As I was putting this list together, it kind of evolved. It has a source material. So technically, the It movie is not a remake of the 1990, the miniseries with Tim Curry, which is brilliant for what they were allowed to put on TV. I'm like, what? But it was
stuff on that series.
I have to believe, in order for it to end up on my list, that it was somewhat inspired. Pennywise the Clown, Skarsgård's clown, was somewhat, based on, the creepiness of that one. So technically, like I said, this remake list of mine is kind of like going to go in and out because of the sheer fact that there's a book involved, and it's based on the book, not the previous movie. So that one's a tough one for me. But like I said, there are a couple of them on my list that meet that criteria that will kind of like be conflicts of interest there. But it's not like we're deciding the fate of the world here. What's your number 5, Brett?
Yeah. So my number 5, and well, you got a thumbnail right there. Is I'm going to go with the Fly. David Cronenberg's The Fly. It's kind of it's I think a classic example, maybe like the definitive example.
Your sound is jammed up again. I don't know if it's StreamYard or you might.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, The Fly, 1986, David Cronenberg's The Fly. It's a maybe like the definitive example of of the remake just completely eclipsing the original. Not to cast aspersions to the original, but I mean, when people hear The Fly, when they think of The Fly, I mean, the Jeff Goldblum, led 86 body horror movie. I mean, that's the one that springs to mind, and I mean, with good reason, because it's it's the epitome of body horror. It's the you're watching a man decompose for an hour and a half essentially, and just the ultimate cautionary tale, as it was a staple of sci-fi and horror, and one of Goldblum's like greatest performances. Ian Malcolm and David Levinson aside, obviously those are probably his most iconic and most likable characters, but Seth Brundle, one of his great performances. One of the great performances, probably, I would say, in just horror and sci-fi in general. And a little bit of a personal story with this too. it should tell you, like, this is how not to do it if you haven't seen David Cronenberg's The Fly. First time I saw it, I think it was like over like a long, like 3-day weekend. This is back when like we rented movies, went to the video store and rented it. So that weekend I saw The Fly. The same weekend I saw Edward Scissorhands. And so that combination is definitely not, suffice to say, I went to school, after that weekend was over, like really looking traumatized, because those both kind of end on a punch in the gut. So that's not a double feature I recommend. And even without Edward Scissorhands, The Fly is one of the great tearjerker endings, like of all sci-fi and horror, I would say. It's just so.
He dies.
Oh, he turns into a big giant bug and gets his head blown off. Come on, that's so tragic.
He had to know that's where that was going. All right, number 4.
No, I don't know. I thought they were going to find a way to like reverse the whole transformation, or I was clinging to the hope for it anyway.
Which movie were you watching? But okay, The Invisible Man, the latest Blumhouse version. Now, once again, we have a book involved here, but I think that most interpretations of The Invisible Man go from the Universal adaptation, since this was basically a Universal associated film. I thought this movie was done on the, was very clever in their use of special effects, very clever in their story. Each Invisible Man changes Griffin's type character, that what he would be, because the time and the science that we're using was different. The original Invisible Man, Hollow Man, a lot of these things basically was him experimenting on himself. Here it ends up being a costume, and the guy was just an asshole. Whereas in the Invisible Man, the books in the movie, it's he was already a jackass to begin with, but he wasn't a homicidal jackass. The chemical that turns him invisible in all the other remakes, it affects his ability, it affects his psyche, and kind of makes him crazy. Whereas here, they decided to make a costume of the Invisible Man and to make the guy just crazy on his own. I thought it was
not just crazy, an asshole.
Yeah, well, he was homicidal. He was homicidal. Some of the kill scenes in this, or when you're talking about using invisibility, the scene in the restaurant where he cuts her sister's throat, and just was it was just done very clever, and that's Blumhouse at their best. So my number 4 is The Invisible Man, the most recent one. What's yours?
Missed the pandemic I don't know if you'd say missed the pandemic. It's like it was released early enough it could make some money theatrically. And it's Blumhouse, so they spent like $8 to make it, and got amazing.
Your sound's cutting out.
Jesus Christ! Didn't used to be a problem. Okay, am I better now?
Yeah, it starts to fade. It starts to sound like the truck driver CD, the walkie-talkie, for a second.
That's weird. I thought, because I'm on my laptop with this now, so
you should have these issues.
What I was saying, those with Invisible Man, again, it released just enough of a head start on the pandemic. They could actually make some money theatrically, and because it's Blumhouse, they make their movies for $8, and they got some crazy good effects out of it for that budget. So I definitely really enjoyed The Invisible Man myself. Number 4, of course, man we all know very well on this show and in this community, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead from 2004. I actually saw this before I saw the original. And now I did not get to see it theatrically because I was living in Europe at the time. This is actually, senior year of high school for me. I saw it right once it was on video, rented it, or was it on DVD? I should say, rented it. You really loved it. And the cool thing about it too is I will say is like if you haven't seen Andy's Lost Tape, which is one of the special features on the DVD, there's 2 kind of like documentaries that are or mockumentaries, I should say. There's the newscast, and there's Andy's Lost Tape, and Andy is the guy in the gun shop across the street from the mall that they kind of gives a bit of a pivotal character in it, and it's all from his perspective. So it's a really rare example of of like supplemental material on a DVD actually becoming kind of kind of helps you get the whole package of the story. But Dawn of the Dead, yeah, really really great zombie movie. My first example or my first instance of seeing zombies run, which I mean that just just amped them up to a whole other like level of scariness. And I think it is fair to say Dawn of the Dead falls under the classification of action horror, which that's two genres I love, and seeing them put together, it's always a blast. So Dawn of the Dead, I would say, like really kind of set the standard for for me as like a zombie fan. Like what I really want to see out of zombie movies was Dawn of the Dead, and of course I couldn't know at the time what the director attached to it, like what was in store later on, and the role I would somewhat tangentially have along that ride. But yeah, that was Dawn of the Dead really kind of set the standard for me for zombie movies at that point. So that is one of my favorite remakes.
Number 3 is the one you've already mentioned, is The Fly. It is one of the 2 true remakes on my list, whereas it was not based on any other source material other than the previous movie. This is the first. This is only the second David Cronenberg movie I'd ever seen. The only other one I had seen up to that point was Scanners, and that was pretty violent. So I pretty much knew, even as a 12-year-old, what to expect when I went to the movies with the family to see this. It was gross. It grossed me out. It was one of the few movies that was like really like, just body parts falling apart. There's everything, but what makes it a great remake is it follows the same dynamic, the same exact dynamic, other than it's not 1957. The times have changed, and this is when you do a remake. This is when you do it. There are a lot of things in the Vincent Price era that you could not do, and you just would not have imagined doing in 1957. But when you're 29 years later, and you have different points of view, you have different perspectives, you have different technology and makeup and stuff to use. You can apply it to make a movie that justifies a remake. Certain films just don't justify a remake. The Crow doesn't justify a remake. Red Dawn doesn't justify a remake. There's nothing you can do that's revolutionary to the point where all you're doing is retreading the same idea with a couple of different camera angles. The Fly is literally the prototypical remake. This is, if you have what they had in 1986, then you go forward with it. Otherwise, you don't really need to be doing it. So The Fly is my number 3. What is your number 3, Brad?
My number 3, and I imagine this is probably going to be on your list too, is The Thing. John Carpenter's Thing. I mean, it's another very similar to The Fly.
It's the last of my 2 that are not true remakes, because it's not technically it's not a remake. I realize that as I put it on there. It's just not a remake, but it's for the purposes of this thing. Yeah, it's on mine for sure.
But yeah, so similar to The Fly, it's an example of the remake. You're really kind of like surpassing the original in terms of just how recognized it is when you hear it. When somebody mentions somebody asks you what you think of The Thing, that's the movie you're thinking. You're immediately jumping to your mind is John Carpenter's 1982 again merging of sci-fi and horror. And The Thing is probably, in a horror movie and a sci-fi movie, probably one of the best examples I can think of just really of just masterfully using paranoia kind of as the really sort of as the driving force of the story. Because again, this creature can morph to look like anybody in this group of scientists, and they're all stranded and in the Arctic. So there's the combination of isolation and paranoia is just really what makes this movie work as well as it does. And then I mean, everybody just turning on each other with their suspicions, like who's potentially the alien, who's not. It's so masterful in turning up the tension and the suspense to just the highest you can possibly get to. And then of course
sound.
Damn it. Better?
Yeah.
And then
it fades away. I don't know why, but
it's weird, yeah. And then the ending, of course, and we talked a little bit about the ending on here, where it's like the ambiguity of the ending with Kurt Russell and
Keith David.
Yeah, Keith David. Yeah, I was going by his character's name, Childs, for a second.
Oh, Childs, yeah.
The last two guys, where it's like, okay, they may or may not. One of them may or may not be the Thing, and do they kill each other? Do they not? And you've said you think it's like they both make it, right?
They're both human, because once again, there's no reason. The whole reason why the Thing either kept its form, or attacked when it was cornered. When it was cornered and had no choice, it revealed itself. Otherwise, it stayed concealed. If one of those things was a Thing and the other one's a human, there's no one else around. He would just turn into whatever he wants to and absorb them. So to me, neither one of them are. All right. So
what just to kind of tack off on there, like what makes the ending so phenomenal to me is the fact that again,
you mute. You're mute. Okay, we just lost Brad completely. All right, so until Brad fixes his situation there, my number 3 is going to be with his devices aren't connected. Something's up. So number two for me is The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. Technically not a remake. But the one cool thing, the cool fact about both The Thing from Another World from 1951 and the John Carpenter's Thing from 1982 is they are both Cold War era movies. They both are fostered by the mistrust and the paranoia that was the Cold War. The shape-shifting, who do you trust, who's your friend? It was the same thing we'd been going to the Cold War with the spies and the Red Scare and all the paranoia. So both of these films, both the 1950 version and the 1980s version, were bookending the Cold War. So that's what I find fascinating about them. Once again, the Thing, John Carpenter's Thing, is, if you want to call it a remake, I can understand, even though technically it isn't. But you're talking about telling a story in a dramatically different way than the other one was. There are no similarities to the 1950s version versus the 1980s version. The 1982 version is the greatest science fiction horror movie ever made, and it holds up 43 years later. John Carpenter's Thing is still one of the most influential horror movies ever done, alien or otherwise. So that is why it is it's number 2 for me. A lot of you thought that would be number 1. Number 1 for me is one of the best horror movies of the 80s, best science fiction horror movies of the 80s, and pound per pound is the best science fiction horror remakes, because all of mine are going to be science fiction horror. That's The Blob. 1988's The Blob. Holy shit. That movie scared the fuck out of me at a time where I really couldn't be scared. All right. 14-year-old me had seen some shit. 14-year-old me had seen all manner of death, destruction, dismemberment, explosion, dissolved. There wasn't anything you could show 14-year-old me that 6 or 7-year-old me hadn't already absorbed. The Blob did it. The Blob did all kinds of things to me. It grossed me out. The kills in the Blob, the way the Blob devours, and it is a true remake. It is a direct remake of the Steve McQueen movie that was released in the 50s, where basically it was ketchup and Jello. This did not use. They did all kinds of effects to bring the Blob to life, and that movie. And like I said, that is one of the grossest, nastiest movies. I mean, people die in ways that are just not cool. One particular person, Herb, never forget him. Herb, um, she's looking. One of the waitress in a diner is looking for the cook. His name is Herb, and she's being chased by the blob, and she runs into the telephone booth to try to call somebody. I don't know why I just kept running. I'm sorry. I don't know why people in horror movies. Why do you stop? Why do you stop? Just keep running. Keep running till you can't run anymore. If you saw something like the blob and you stop, you need to die. But so she gets into this telephone booth, and then the blob just completely encases her. Completely encases the telephone booth, and that's Herb right there. And his face, you see, because the blob basically eats you and is digesting you throughout this entire movie. So as the blob is crushing, around the telephone booth, she sees Herb, and there he is right there. And then at the last minute, the blob just collapses the telephone booth and eats her. There is one scene where the blob comes up through a manhole and snatches the guy and snaps him this way. I mean, there's another one where he reaches through, and it's a direct homage to the original movie where the blob comes up to a drain. But instead, this version of the blob grabs the person and yanks them, consumes them, and brings them into the drain. And you see the drain get all big. This movie's crazy, man. And it's just not a gelatin looking thing. It's got tentacles. It's just, there's one scene where a guy, he thinks the girl he's going out with is sleeping. So he's a pervert. And he's going to reach into her shirt. As he's doing that, his arm gets caught by the blob. You can't see it, but then the tentacles that this blob has reaches through her eyes and her mouth and crushes her face in, and then sucks him in. The whole movie is a disgusting display of science fiction visual effects. It by far is one of the great actual remakes I've ever seen. Probably, I think it's the best remake I've ever seen, especially in my genre. So there you go. And let's see if
so it's StreamYard. I think it's being a dick because I kept trying. It took me out there. It's like it removed you for whatever reason. It kept telling me it's like, okay, we lost access to your
it says you aren't connected.
Which my internet's fine. So okay. And my laptop.
I gave my last two. So my last two was a thing, which is basically continued off of yours. Your number 3 was my number 2, and then I gave my number 1, which was the blob. So number 2, you can go back to back.
Well, now I'm on my PC, so unfortunately you might have to grin and bear it on like some of the feedback, whatever you're talking about. Before I was switched over my laptop. But yeah, number 2. This is another Universal monster remake, but not one of the more recent ones. Is The Mummy from 1999. This is actually
what?
What do you mean? No. Come on, man. That's the
how? No.
Yes.
That's a movie with a mummy in it. It's not. Yeah, whatever. I guess you could. We're stretching anyway.
It's
so.
The third iteration of the Mummy, because they had the original with Boris Karloff and they had the 59 movie, and then this, and like I was such an Indiana Jones fan as a kid. I mean, this is just right up my alley. You have the Mummy with an Indiana Jones spin on it. I was that summer '99. I was 12-year-old me. I was amped to see this, and it did not let me down. It's aged very impressively. It's like the Mummy has stood the test of time, which is certainly more than I can say for the sequels. I get a kick out of them, but they're stupid, particularly The Mummy Returns. But yeah, The Mummy, it's also the only one of the 3 that actually does have a horror component to it. It is a legit scary movie with like the tension that it builds up to Imhotep's return, and like a lot of the deaths are just really. It is borderline rated R. The effects for the time, still pretty good today. Maybe could use a little bit of spit shine by today's standards, but again, for realizing this supernatural, returning menace, in modern times, The Mummy from 1999 really, it definitely is very much a hallmark of my adolescence, and still very near to my heart. I can put it on anytime. I have it on, every summer, every Halloween. Still absolutely love it. And now my number 1, which moving out of sci-fi and horror for this because this is moving into
you're gonna fuck up our list.
My and Aaron's
Yeah.
genre is my number one is Fist of Legend with Jet Li. It is a remake of the Bruce Lee classic Fist of Fury. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's he plays a student, a Chinese. It's set in the 1930s. He plays a Chinese kung fu student who returns home to Shanghai during the Japanese occupation to avenge the death of his teacher during very sordid circumstances after a match he had died.
Okay, I should have clarified. Yeah. Remakes that people have actually seen.
I can assure you, people have seen Fist of Legend. You know who has seen Fist of Legend? The Wachowskis, who you cited as one of their major sources of inspiration for The Matrix. Look it up, special features. So
that don't mean the rest of the world. So cinephiles like them, just like Kurosawa, nobody saw those things, but George Lucas did. I mean,
comments. Let William know. But Fist of Legend, yeah. I mean, I was such a Jet Li fan as a kid, and this was like probably 90% of Jet Li fans rate this as number one. I kind of go back and forth on whether I'd say that's either Fist of Legend or Fearless, but there we go. Look at this. What? Yeah. Yeah, people have actually seen the love is pouring in.
That list went south real quick.
And the famed Yuan Wu Ping on the fight choreography. I mean, just some of his best work, and him just slumming it is just better than a lot of people's best work. So
you're not alone, Mighty. No one is, but yeah.
So it's also kind of a rare instance. Because other ones I cited in this list are like remakes that I feel outdid the original. Fist of Legend and Fist of Fury, they really kind of stand side by side because this is a remake, but it doesn't try to imitate Bruce Lee. It very much like this is the Jet Li version, and it does its own thing. It does it very effectively. And so I've seen it, I don't know how many times, but I will see it just as many more. Fist of Legend, my number one remake of all time. Point Break, yeah. You know what? It is kind of Point Break did get a remake, not a great one, but they got a remake in 2015. But you know what else is a remake of it? Is the original Fast and Furious. Because I mean, everybody is now like you get 5 minutes in the original.
I don't consider that a remake of anything.
But everybody gets 5 minutes in the original Fast and Furious. What's everybody say? It's like, oh, this is Point Break with street racing. So really, it is literally Point Break with cars.
Wow.
So there we go. Oh, Droga says, here's a good one.
Which one? We have several.
Well, like the Tim Burton one, I think that's the one that's the most that remake applies. But even he kind of said at the time, it's like he doesn't consider it like a remake in the traditional sense. And then the new
once again, it's a book. Yeah, these are books. So
when actually the ending of the Burton movie, that's actually the one out of all the Planet of the Apes movies, that's the one that actually does the ending of the book the closest. But yeah. And then with the newer ones, it's like they kind of like if you've seen the original series, I mean, now Conquest and Battle for the Planet of the Apes, they kind of suck, but Rise and Dawn, they definitely they adapt elements to it. They are kind of like loose remakes, and they do them a lot better than the originals did. Because again, the Planet of the Apes, the original franchise, it really went downhill fast.
Oh, it's the 60s going into the 70s too. It turned into exploitation movies or blaxploitation. Not blaxploitation, but it turned into a social commentary. It always was, but it really 1968 was, you got to understand where we were.
And think about it, because I actually saw, I remember this very clearly. I saw the original Planet of the Apes. It was Christmas Day in '99. It was like they had like on TBS, I think it was, they had a Planet of the Apes marathon, so they ran all of them. I only watched the first one that day.
He's not talking about the Tim Burton one, by the way.
Yeah, I'm talking about the original with Charlton Heston.
No, he's not. He had to. I guess the remake. He's not. He's talking about.
Okay, gotcha.
I guess it would be the Reeves one.
Yeah, well, the original though, it's like because again, I was a kid when I first saw it. And now I'd had it's another thing, kind of like the twist ending is. I mean, it's the sort of thing that's so. It's like kind of like the Luke father revelation, Empire Strikes Back, or Norman Bates and Psycho. It's one of the ones that's so earth shattering, where it's like generations just seeing the movie later on, like know it before they even see it. So I knew the twist about it being on Earth before I saw it. Actually, had spoiled it for me by The Simpsons. But seeing it as a kid and then revisiting it as an adult, that movie is rated G. That movie is fucked up in so many ways. I mean, the stuff that the apes are doing to the humans. There are terms that are thrown around willy nilly and like emasculation. It's like that word went over my head at that age, and then I see Planet of the Apes again as an adult, and it's like, oh, they throw the term emasculation around for like what they're doing to humans in those cages. Like, oh, this is bad. What's going on?
Yeah, because they didn't want them. They didn't want them breeding. So.
Yeah, but again, as a kid, you don't know the term emasculation.
Well, and that was rated G, and there's a lot more into the 1968 version that kids really probably shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised they rated it G with the half-naked woman, running around the entire time.
It's violent. It's violent, very, very much by the 60 standards, certainly even a little bit by today's standards. So
technically there's nudity in it, so it's not much, but it's in there. But it's not. I mean, G-rated. G-rated is general audience. G-rated, you can your kid could technically go to a G-rated.
You can take a 6-year-old into that, and you should not take a 6-year-old to the original Planet of the Apes. Just saying.
That 1990 version.
Oh
was really good.
That's another one I could have included. If we're doing like our top 10, maybe it's like I would definitely would put that one is like really gotten a lot of. That's had like a resurgence, I think, in the last like 15 or so years. Like the 1990 with Tony Todd, because that one was underrated at its time, and that's really another one of my favorite zombie movies. I actually probably would put it a bit above the original.
I'm just all zombied out. There was no zombie movies on my list because I never want to see another zombie movie again. To be honest with you, if that's one part of the genre where I've had enough. I've had enough. Well, it's a book too, so technically you could say that Tim Burton took his version of it, and then the Gene Wilder version was like 50 years ago. So I really can't. The world has changed so much, and like I said, that's the difference when you bring up the word remake. There's only 2 movies on my list, I think, that are actual legitimate remakes. That's the Blob and The Fly. Everything else could be interpreted as something that the creator went to a mutual source and took his own version of it forward than anything else. But people say remake is it's not as damaging a term as reboot is. Remake can is second. Is second because, like I said, if you want to waste your time and your money and turn every man, woman, and child off about whatever you're about to do, attach the word reboot to it. It has the same effect of farting in an elevator. People can't wait to get away from you when the door opens. So when you talk about remake, that's another term that you got to be real careful with, because it's the fact that, especially if they hold the original near and dear, people take remakes personally, even though they shouldn't. They take remakes personally. The average American hears remakes and they're thinking, oh, wait a minute, you're attacking that one thing that was special to me. How dare you, type of situation. Whereas if you're a grown ass man or woman, you really shouldn't feel that way. But that's what happens. So when you use the 2 R's, you really put yourself under the gun as far as going forward.
Yeah, and you're gonna love this one. There are a couple that I debated whether or not to put on the list because they're not remakes in the traditional sense, but they are heavily inspired and influenced and pay tribute to something. Is Life After Fighting, Boggy, and The Princess, because they all, in their own ways, are heavily influenced and pay tribute to The Raid. They're not like remakes in a traditional sense, but it's like they have Raid-esque feel to them, let's say.
Okay, future audience, the things I brought up you actually heard of. You're gonna have to. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to Google Brad shit. So have fun.
So have fun discovering all this. Like I'm the enlightening one here. It's like you guys, all these things that Williams down playing. I alert you to them, and you become enlightened.
It's like that ambient music you can play on your little smart clock. Put you to sleep. There's Brad for you.
No, that's very much the opposite.
So like I don't.
They awaken.
I don't know if Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You'd have to. I guess you'd have to get the interpretation from the director themselves to see what influenced them. Did they sit and watch that particular movie, or did they go to the source movie? I know Denny Villeneuve went through the source movie because you can tell, because there are certain things that are in his version that are not the 1984 version. Obviously, but with The Fly, it's the same basic hallmarks as that The Fly had. It's the same thing. It's just drastically retold through modern times and modern technology, but it's the same story. Invisible Man, pretty much it's the same story, but there's also a book involved there. So like I said this was a remake kind of show, but at the same time, I just realized that only 2 of mine are actual remakes. The R word you do want to use, like I was saying before, like in case of Buffy people, if you do, please make sure you people know that yours is a revival. It is a revival. People love the fuck out of that show, and I'm glad Sarah McGill is going to be associated with it, so that makes it easier. But yeah, you start saying Buffy reboot, you might get stabbed in the alleyway by one of those fans because they ain't fucking around with you. Buffy fans don't mess around. The show's been off the air for almost 25 years. They'll still get you. You know, you mess up Buffy, man. I know some Buffy people will be like, you know what? I got my disguise ready. I got my getaway plan ready. Don't mess with that. You know, certain shows, and there are certain shows that are always going to have fandoms like that. So
Droga has a good one here. What about Cats?
Well,
that's not really
how. I
really
ignored that on purpose, Joker, because it's not a remake.
Yeah, it's an adaptation of it's a make.
It's a play. One that it's Andrew Lloyd Webber's play that basically made into a movie,
and a very infamously bad one. That
it's a damn shame because Andrew Lloyd Webber, his stuff really I mean, he did Phantom of the Opera, the Emmy Rossum one in 2004, which was excellent. I mean, I saw Phantom of the Opera at the Elements Theater. I actually sat through Phantom of the Opera as a kid, and I've memorized Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera from the opening note all the way down to the end. If I wanted to torture your eardrums with singing, I know all the words to the songs. I know all the words to every song from the 1987 performance, the Broadway performance of Phantom of the Opera, Prima Donna, Down Once More, the whole deal. And when I saw that movie, I was wanting to hate that 2004 movie. And I'm like, they didn't do a bad job at all. The only thing that really sucks is Sarah Brightman, who plays Christine. Her voice, Emmy Rossum is not going to touch that, and Michael Crawford is not going to be. I mean, you're talking about people who are not just actors in the play; they are singers. They are from operas. So yeah. But like I said, when it comes from a play like that, no, I wouldn't consider Cats a remake at all.
It's a make. Okay, what else we got? What other examples you guys are giving us? I have not seen the new Mean Girls, so I really can't comment on that.
I will never. I haven't seen the old one, so there you go. You're gonna have to. That's a tie, Omega. Listen, regardless to what the internet feels about Joss Whedon, rightly or wrongly, people, you know what? People in the actual world, the other 97% who don't have their face glued to the internet, they have a different opinion of him. And I'm not going to justify one way or another. I think the guy's a fucking scumbag, but I'm on the internet. I am of the 3%. So I know when the topic came up about bringing the series back, a lot of the people that I talked to were asking, is he going to be in it? Because a lot of these guys don't dive into the stuff that we dive into. They know he was the one that was behind it, and that those questions came up. So there are people who do love Buffy for him. There are people who love Buffy for Sarah Michelle Gellar, but a lot of people, more than anybody on the internet, wants to accept he has their allegiance, you know, whether you like it or not. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because when they first brought this project up, I'm like, okay. Are they going to work without Joss Whedon? Because Joss Whedon to a lot of fans is synonymous with Buffy. Even if somebody else has a different opinion of it, it doesn't matter. It's your audience that you got to be considerate of. You know, I'm wondering how this is going to go because, you know, obviously we know the reasons why nobody would want anything to do with him. I don't know why any of the cast, to be honest with you. But these are things that are behind the scenes. And like I said, unless you are perpetually online, you're probably not going to know or care about these things. You come in at the end product. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this whole Buffy thing. Because like I said, I wasn't the hugest fan of the show. There were certain episodes, like I said, Once More Revealing. There's a couple of episodes in there that were really kind of cool. and I enjoyed the camaraderie that they built over the course of time. That last episode was that one was kind of just, I think they just ran out of time. But yeah, interesting. It's going to be an interesting point to see where Josh Whedon spun that role. Yeah, it's him. And in fact, whenever version of this comes out, you're going to see his name, and he's getting money for this. Even if he's not involved, Josh Whedon's going to get paid. He's the executive producer, and he created that version of Buffy. So he don't even have to be in it. He can be in a rocking chair and knitting socks, and he's going to, Venmo, here's my money.
Yes,
here's my money.
Do, Josh.
But like I said, Brad's not the target audience.
Well, even without Josh being an asshole, I'm not target audience.
Brad's not the target audience. So with Brad, me and Brad can call Josh Whedon a piece of shit all day long. We're not. They don't care about us. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting because I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. Okay. No. Okay, we're wrong on all occasions here because Red Dragon is not a remake of Manhunter. Red Dragon is both Manhunter and Red Dragon come from the novel Red Dragon. Comes from the novel Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. So Michael Mann adapted that into Manhunter. And I think who did the Red Dragon movie? Who directed that? I don't think that was done.
Brett Ratner, actually.
Okay.
There's another piece of shit also.
Well, there's a lot of them in that industry. So when you look up the Red Dragon, the book, it's to be honest with you, I think Red Dragon, the Ed Norton movie, it's a lesser movie. The 2002 movie is a lesser film. It's based on a 1981 novel, The Red Dragon. So, like I said, both. I wish I could bring this up. But, all right, here we go. Hold on. Red Dragon. I'll put that in the chat for you guys. They were both based on a 1981 novel. Now, although the Red Dragon, the 2002 one, is way closer to the book. It's way closer to the book. Manhunter is a way better movie. Manhunter is a classic. The only reason why the Red Dragon got made is because of popularity of Hannibal Lecter post Silence of the Lamb. But that Red Dragon is not a remake of Manhunter. That Red Dragon is a direct interpretation of the Red Dragon, the novel that Thomas Harris released in 1981. Manhunter is, but it took the look and the feel and everything else and made it 80s because that's when it was made, and that's what Michael Mann did. Red Dragon is a more accurate to the source material. Manhunter's a better movie in my opinion. I mean, dude, there's a scene in here where I always refer to it, where it's back in 1980, so we're watching VHS, and they're looking at Graham, played by William Peterson, is looking at two TVs, and he's looking at the footage of the home videos. And he's starting to run things through his mind. It's a scene called Graham Figures It Out. YouTube it. I think I can find it. Hold on. It's one of the greatest cinematic scenes I've ever seen. And it's playing. He has his own theme.
Or it says Brad is a remake of Aaron.
I'm not even going to.
Well, she is. You're
not your sister.
But maybe she's a remake of me. Just saying.
All right, guys. So here is this. I'm going to put this in the chat room, and I brought this up on the channel before because this scene right here is how you make movies. Is everything in that scene? I wish we could watch it, but we probably get bratted. Everything in that scene, it starts with no music, right? And as the wheels start turning in Graham's mind, the music escalates, and it just escalates and escalates, and the tension escalates, and he starts talking to himself. So I'll explain the scene, and I just put it in the chat. So he's trying to figure out how the villain, the serial killer, the Tooth Fairy, is finding his victims. So he got two TVs in front of him, and he starts saying things like, he sees a dog because the killer had killed the dog. He killed everything. He's trying to figure out, well, how did he know that was their dog? Dog doesn't have a collar. So he keeps saying things that doggy doesn't have a collar, but it's Lee's dog and the Jacoby cat. And you need a glass cutter because the killer used a glass cutter to get in, and every other thing, because everything about you is seeing. Your entire perception, your entire fantasy is about seeing. And then they realize, spoiler alert, it's almost 40 years old. He realizes that the killer, the Tooth Fairy, has seen the films that he's watching. And the way that scene rolls out in Manhunter, they tried it in Red Dragon, it just didn't work. It, for a lot of reasons. But the build, and then he stands up, you've seen these films, and then Dennis Farina, who's his boss, he tells him, he calls down to the storeroom and it says, tell him to look for cans, tell him to look for home video cans. And they said, yeah, there's cans of home movies, Gateway Labs. And then he says, look at the other one. And then he said, no, it's Bob's Film in Birmingham. I said, peel back the label, send, stores send them out. And it's the same one. So now that they know that their guy has seen these films, and the only way he could have seen them as if he developed them. So they narrow it down, and that's how they find the Tooth Fairy. And one of the and they played Inagata to be. I mean, it's just, this movie is everything, and it's a serial killer movie without a lot of blood. Michael Mann could tell this horrific story without showing you a lot of things. He did it Miami Vice style, and like I said, 1986 was the height of Miami Vice. So yeah, I would say Red Dragon is not a remake; it's more of a adaptation. But the better movie is Manhunter. All right, Maniac with Elijah Wood. Nah, it's just not. I mean, I just never got interested, man. Sorry. 310 to Yuma. 310 to Yuma is pretty good. William hates Kung Fu. Okay, here we go again with this. I know you're fucking with me, but guys, stop saying stupid shit in the chat because people think I hate Kung Fu, and I don't. I'm just not him. There's a difference. It's just like Brad doesn't hate Star Trek, but he's never going to be as into it as I am. Doesn't mean he hates Star Trek. It's just, I'm just not into it like that. Sorry. But love Phantom of the Opera.
Enlighten all of you.
Oh, so you're saying because I love Phantom of the Opera, the word of the day really is a masculine? Why would that be? Why would I lose my man card over watching? I go to operas. When I was deployed or when I went overseas and when we went to places in Europe and Italy, I searched out operas. I go to the Smith Center here for an opera every now and then. I love operas. When I was a kid, I had a lot of my likes and stuff. I had teachers in like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, who when we were taking tests or reading or doing things like that, she would put on opera, right? And so that kind of stuff, when you're 6 or 7 years old and you're hearing opera, and there's no peer pressure telling you that it's not cool, you start listening to stuff like that. I'm big into opera. But Phantom of the Opera is one of my, like I said, I could, I have memorized that whole fucking play, man. I would just listen to it. I tore that tape up. And I got it because my sister had started listening to it. She was in drama class. And so I borrowed her tape and just ran that shit until the point where I bought a new one. So, yeah, sorry. Sorry if you think that way for it, but I'm not, hey. Listen and like the things that make you feel good. Don't worry about everybody else. I know so many people that can't have conversations about some of the stuff that they really like because they think they'll be perceived in a certain way. Listen, you have limited amount of time on this planet to have those conversations and to like those things. Fucking do it, man. I mean, don't worry about it being, especially with the internet and places like this where you can commune. Fuck that, Brad is me. Aaron saw that. Yeah, Sherlock Holmes, the one with RDJ.
Yeah, it's more like another application.
And that's a book. The Crow. No, The Crow was horrible. Freaky Friday is pretty good. I listen as a fan of Dario Argento. Suspiria was already a weird movie. It was already weird. I don't know. Years after seeing the modern version of Suspiria, I still don't know what the fuck I saw. It's far creepier. It's a far creepier adaptation than his film. There's some weird, nasty shit that goes on. Dakota Johnson, man, that girl just not. She's fearless. She is fearless, and she did some really avant-garde stuff in that movie. What are my thoughts on the DS9 comparison to the other Star Trek series? They should not be compared. I think all Star Trek is Star Trek. Now DS9, it's hard to compare DS9 to the other ones because of the mission. It was a station. It was political intrigue. It was after the Cardassian War. It wasn't a alien of the week going across the galaxy on a ship like the other shows were. And now it kind of it added that element to it when you had the Defiant brought in, because the Defiant could go in. But even then, they were limited to where they went. They went into the Gamma Quadrant, and they stayed in the Alpha Quadrant. That's basically what they did. Once the Dominion War kicked off, that was basically where they stayed. I thought DS9's first 2 years were rough, but once you realize that the entire series was to tell the tale of the prophets and the Dominion War, and it all started to click. And once end of season 3, when you first saw the Founders and the Dominion, it kicked ass from that point on. So I think DS9 is a great show. There's not too many bad Star Trek. I mean, there's shows like Lower Decks that I'm not into as much as the other ones. But if you said, you wouldn't be torturing me, making me watch Lower Decks. I rank Voyager's always going to be my favorite 1 to 7. It's probably going to get replaced by Strange New Worlds here when Strange New World finally wraps up. After that, it's Next Generation. After that, it's DS9. Enterprise got completely meddled with, or it would be up there higher. DS9's up there for me. I think, and plus it's being told in that contemporary Star Wars or Star Trek universe. So people were hating on the new Crow movie for all the wrong reasons, but like I told you before, it wasn't even done. I had been saying this since Momoa had been cast. And everybody said, "Oh, the MILF Magnet will do it, right?" Yeah. He would have been the only reason that it made any money. Any money that movie made would have been because Momoa would probably taking his shirt off doing it. But as far as like wide appeal outside of MILF country, it would have bombed. For those of you who you don't realize, who can't, and I'm not saying this as you, Joker, for anybody that can't comprehend why the 2024 Crow failed, don't understand the gravitational pull of the 1994 version. And like I always explain, it's that movie was as much a product of its time and the things that happened during it than anything else. And you cannot replicate that. The good and the bad. The aura around that movie after Brandon Lee died. That movie was haunted. There were people that said, "I'm not going to go see that movie because I think it's cursed." And yet it still made $50 million of a movie that was not stated to make that kind of money. And I hate to say this because I love The Crow. But if Brandon Lee lives, that movie bombs. If Brandon Lee lives, that movie bombs. The soundtrack would sell. And maybe the soundtrack might help the movie if he had lived. I truly believe that if Brandon Lee doesn't die in the making of The Crow in 1993 at the age of 27, that nobody cares about that movie. Nobody knew what The Crow was. I knew what The Crow was. I met J.O. Barr before there was even a mention of the movie. I have I have stuff signed by him. I have The Crow. I knew what The Crow was. But the general public didn't know who he was, what he was. And the general public, and I hate to say this because he would have ended up being his own man, his own actor, but the general public knew Brandon Lee as Bruce Lee's son. And then Bruce Lee having died young, and this whole thing. So it sucks to say that because I love that movie, but it doesn't become the cult hit that it does if he lives. So you can't replicate that. You can't replicate the 90s. For those of you who weren't living and listening to music in the 90s, we just did. You see all of our musical shows where I do my best to convey the atmosphere there. It's not something that can be translated into 2020 or transferred in 2024. So the people that were hating on The Crow were hating on it for the right reasons. They were hating it for the right reason because it was those reasons that made the original Crow special. And you're trying to replicate that in a time and place. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And it was predictable that movie was going to fail. If they would have done another Crow movie, the best thing that they could have done is done a Crow movie that had nothing to do with the look and the feel of the 1994 movie. Once they decided that they were going to do that, then the movie was dead on arrival. And I hate to say it because you know how I feel about shitting on movies before they come out, but they put themselves in a really bad spot. So yeah. Let's see. No. It would have been another movie that he did. He wasn't at that point in his career. He was on the up. You know, he had done Rapid Fire. He had done some other movies, but he was on the come up. He was on the cusp of breaking away from just being Bruce Lee's son and actually starting to be, you know, a action star that like I said, and Brad brings this up every now and then, is him and Keanu Reeves would have been the same age.
Yeah, would have been about the same age.
So you're talking about somebody who's probably more capable to play these type of roles that had been brought out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and up till now, but he wasn't there yet. Now, when you say cult classic, it still bombs though. A cult classic, like it can bomb and then be revisited by people. Rocky Horror bombed. All right, Blade Runner bombed. There's a lot of cult classics that are just outright, you know, amazing that bombed, but it wouldn't have made 50 million in the box office. And I don't know how the only way The Crow becomes a cult like that is the soundtrack. The Crow has one of the great soundtracks of that era. We've gone over that. We just played another song from it in The Big Empty that literally shot STP up into the atmosphere. So no, yeah, I unfortunately, and I hate to say, I don't say that with any joy or glee, guys. But prior, if he doesn't die, and I'm not saying
we're not saying this like Brandon Lee fell on the sword or anything here for The Crow.
Yeah, he would have gone on. If he had made that movie, it would have probably made a little bit of money. It would have probably gone direct to DVD, or not direct, but real quick to VHS. We would have watched it, and if it, you know, the soundtrack would have made it a cult classic years and years later. But it would have never been the phenomenon that it became. And I hate saying that. I think he would have gone on to have a great career. I think he would have gone on to be able to break free of Bruce Lee. I mean, never break. He's his father, but he would have been looked at as Brandon Lee, the actor, instead of Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, which is something he was in his shadow of, because that's a big shadow. And I think he would have been all right. I think he would have been probably replaced some of these guys that have taken these roles. Shit, if Steven Seagal's out there doing movies at the same time, just imagine adding Brandon Lee to everything Steven Seagal ever did. So there is a spot. So so I don't say that, and I remember when I went to go see this movie, I felt like, you know, I just felt weird going to see this movie of a guy who's never going to get a moment beyond this. I'm like, what if I love this movie? I'm never going to get to see this guy evolve. He's never going to get to see this guy take the next step. He is eternally frozen in this role. because it's the biggest role he ever had. It wouldn't have been had he not died, but it turns out this is going to be the biggest role he ever had. So yeah, and when you talk about The Crow, when you talk about the remake, all of that stuff was a part of its success. That you can't, unless you're going to kill somebody, you can't replicate that. So yeah. Even if I'm alone, it doesn't mean I'm not right. Nosferatu, the Kloskitsky one. I was going to, I thought about putting that one on there. That was an honorable mention for me. Yeah, that one's that one's creepy. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not in this case. You're talking about Brandon Lee. And I don't know how old you guys were in 1992, 1994 when this first happened. So a lot of this is looking back on this revisionist history for people who weren't, of age then. But nobody knew who the Crow was. People who knew who Brandon Lee was, but he was a genre actor at best. He wasn't like, he wasn't Wesley Snipes. He wasn't, that star yet. He was on his way to being that star. But no, you can't equate this with every actor who's passed and their movie has done that, but you can equate it with this one, because this movie, nobody even knew this movie was even being made until Brandon Lee was killed. And you're talking about an IP in The Crow that no one knew who it was. They didn't even know anything about it. It didn't have the budget for wide to get to the wide promotion. The album was its promotion. It wasn't like we're talking about an Alien or a big genre movie that people would have known. A lot of movies in the early to mid 90s just got put out. They just got released. You didn't get a trailer. You didn't get anything. You just got released because that's, you were going to make a couple bucks in the theaters, and then you were going to go on rental, and you were going to make your money that way. And if your movie did good enough to draw some money but not draw big money, guess what? You got a direct-to-video sequel, so everybody was happy. So you guys are looking back on The Crow in a through a lens that did not exist in 1994. There was no internet. Things weren't going viral like that. And like I said, as a fan of The Crow before this movie even came out, I knew who he was, but I had to explain to people what that was. And once again, you hear Bruce Lee and you hear Brandon Lee. You only heard of Brandon Lee, unfortunately, because of Bruce Lee. And that's not even nepotism. That was his father. I mean, of course we're gonna associate it with him. So no, I'm sorry. The Crow is not what it became if he lives, because the aura around it, the morbid attraction around it was because he died. There were a lot of, like I said, some people were hesitant to see it. There's a lot of people who wanted to see it because this, of what happened, that would have never heard or gone to see this movie. It's tragic, but it's true. Let's see. Yes, that's the only thing that was good about that movie. That had a real good soundtrack. One of the most memorable songs from Crow City of Angels is "Gold Dust Woman" done by Hole. That was one of my favorite ones on that soundtrack. The Crow City of Angels was a mistake too, because once again, that Crow looked an awful lot like Eric Draven, and everything that they wanted to do was Eric Draven. And I'm like, Eric Draven had one night. The Bird chose him for one night. That Bird has been around for thousands of years and has chosen thousands of participants to get their revenge that don't look anything like Eric Draven. Eric Draven looks like that because when he was brought back to life, and this is in the comic book, it's actually on the cover on the comic book, when he gets to his old apartment and he gets to his dresser to look at himself in the mirror, there is a mask. A mime mask hanging right there that has the design, and that's where he takes that facial design from. Each Crow is going to have their moment to where the Comanche one has his tribal Indian, or not Indian. Sorry, his Native American, his paint. Ooh, wow, I can't believe that. Ugh, sorry, guys. His Native American paint, of his tribe painted across his face as he comes back. And there's one from the Civil War that has, so it's each one of them, and that's part of the story. So when they try to do these crow things and they try to bring back, they're trying to capture something that the story itself says no. One night he got one night he to right his wrongs, and then he went back, and now the bird is the only one that should be in every movie. That's the R2D2 and C3PO of the whole thing. As a kid, Rapid Fire was the first movie I saw Brandon Lee, and then I went back and saw Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Yeah, my first was him with Showdown in Little Tokyo. Then I probably saw The Crow after that. Then I saw Rapid Fire.
Yeah, but for most people, Brandon Lee wasn't a name until he died, and that's a horrible thing to have to say out loud. That is an absolutely fucking horrible thing to say out loud. But the majority of people who would realize who and what Brandon Lee was, aside from being Bruce Lee's son, did not come to that realization until he passed. Even when the breaking news happened, what did it say? Son of Bruce Lee killed in accidental gunfire. Because that was the name. Bruce Lee was the name. And it's unfortunate because he was only 27. He's only 27 years old. I think he would have become minimum Mark Dacascos, but potentially much higher than that. And those guys tend to keep themselves in shape. So at what it would have been like, he died at 27, 1994. So he would have been, he wouldn't even been 60, right? He wouldn't have even been 60. So you just imagine, look at Keanu Reeves, look at the Tom Cruise
at 60, yeah.
At 60, and look at the guys who are in the martial arts that you look at them now, they're still in great shape. He wouldn't have, Mark Dacascos could kick my ass now.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So he would have gone on to be one of the greats. But at the time he died and it was killed, he wasn't there yet. And his name wasn't there yet.
Yeah, he was. He was about 27 or 28 when he I think he just turned 28. 93. He's born 65. Yeah, he just turned 28 like 2 months prior when the accident.
Was he 28? Because I always get him at 20. I mean,
yeah, he had just turned 28.
I mean, yep, 28. Wow, damn, dude. February 1st. Oh,
yeah.
He's 20. Oh my god.
And to add, I mean, a little bit to that, his father, Bruce, was 32 going on 33 when he died.
That's just a damn shame. You look at his filmography. All right, Legacy of Rage, Laser Mission, Showdown in Little Tokyo.
That's the one he did that was really not very good. But I don't blame him. That's just a really really low budget movie that they just. I mean, we all got it. You got to do what you got to do. So let's pay the bills.
Well, you have to get it. You have to get into that. Showdown in Little Tokyo. Okay, it was a bomb. It was a bomb.
Well, it wasn't even a bomb. It just had a limited release.
They $8 million budget and it made $2.3 million. So yeah.
And then he'd also done his first. It wasn't even like movies roles. His first big role was actually on Kung Fu: The Legend Continues. The TV movie that was a continuation of the series Kung Fu. So we started with that, and Legacy of Rage, that was his first and only Hong Kong movie. And he did Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is that was the point where he was starting to be on the come up, because people took notice of Rapid Fire, and then of course The Crow was going to.
And Rapid Fire was promoted. Fire was promoted. His other movies, really
and he was promoted in it. I mean, I mean, they went out of their way to let you know. It's look at the poster alone and the trailer alone. It's they were, and they were apparently. I'd read there was even discussions before he died of Rapid Fire 2. And he'd also been in talks for Johnny Cage in the original Mortal Kombat, so he was on the come up. It's but
like I said, at the time he died, he was Bruce Lee's son. That's the way the world perceived him. So that you weren't getting. You look at the box offices for most of those movies, even by 90 standards, they were escalating, but he just wasn't there yet. Then you have The Crow, that and 23 million, and believe me, 13 of that money, 13 million was money that got added on because of the special effects that they had to put his face on there.
And with what you're saying about, it's like, other than the tragedy, it's like it would have, I don't think, like, I mean, that's the kind of thing is Brandon, I don't imagine he didn't take that role or that project, he didn't look at that as like a star vehicle. I don't think he looked at that as like, as expanding his portfolio.
It was a genre. I mean, but like I said, if he lives, that doesn't happen. That tragic day in May doesn't happen to him. He goes on and he continues his trajectory. Right? He becomes the guy. He becomes that guy. He becomes up there. He's up there with the Jackie Chans. He's up there with the Dawn of the Dragons. He's up there. He's that guy because he was younger than those guys, and he had the look. He had a look about him that was ready made, and he was getting up there. And I think he was fighting through that. I'm Bruce Lee's son, and he, like I said, Rapid Fire was the first one that was marketed. That's him, and then The Crow I don't think would have been heavily marketed as Rapid Fire was. But like I said, The Crow ends up making $94 million, which in 1994, that's a lot of money.
That was big. Yeah, you were big. You didn't have to we definitely didn't have the $1 billion standard back in 94.
Yeah, 1994, for those of you all who were around, that's a lot of money. And it was nowhere near what The Crow is projected to make. The Crow was probably projected. The Crow had its original budget that was between 8 to 10 million. Would have probably broken even, if not lost money. That's what those kind of movies. But that's the kind of movies that they did because once again, you throw them in the theaters, we make our money on the back end. We still had HBO, we still had cable, we still had those things back then.
I imagine it would have really found a really good home on HBO during that
HBO. Time. What really, like I said, the only other thing besides the notoriety of him passing was the soundtrack. Like I said, you hear from my mouth. The Crow is one of the great soundtracks to ever be made. The Big Empty is in there for literally less than 20 seconds. And yet they use that song to launch that movie. But remember, the promotion came after the movie was made. They also dumped a lot more money into the ad budget because of that. And they didn't say it, but they knew that the audience was coming to see, this is the film where it happened. And there's a morbid sense about it. And I love The Crow. And I wish what I was saying was false, but it just wasn't. I just don't think it was. I'm glad it's become one of the most revered movies, but I think it did so at the cost of his life. And it's like, I would have taken him being around for 60, at the age of 16, 65 of that option. But yeah. I saw this. Was the Yellow Ranger?
In the second one, yeah. She was the Asian girl who has the knife fight with the.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the guy who passed away today. The person who passed away today was in Big Trouble in Little China.
No, she died. Yeah, she died.
She died in a car accident. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
like in 2001. Yeah, so she passed away quite a while ago.
Yeah, I know a lot. I remember. We were still the internet was at its infancy. Still, we still were gonna. I remember being online when that happened. That was that was a big death. Every Power Rangers death, obviously, there's been 2 of that original second season. You obviously the one we talk about the most here because of the kind of work we were doing. But yeah, I remember that day, man. That was a dark day.
Brandon earned his spot. Yeah. There's the whole thing about the lead.
Say that again. Brandon earned what? What?
Brandon earned his spot. He wasn't a nepo baby.
I agree with you, Aaron. But the perception, it wasn't that people thought he was one. The general populace only knew him in regards to him being the son of Bruce Lee. Most of the people hadn't seen. You look at most people hadn't seen a Brandon Lee movie. Most people they said 85 to 90% of the people who saw The Crow, that was their first Brandon Lee movie. The world just didn't know him in that regard. I'm not saying he is. I think he would have gone on to be a fine actor. But human nature, you see how we act these days. Everything is viral. That was viral before even anybody knew what viral was. That his death is a story unto itself. And you're talking about a movie about a guy being resurrected. It's just it horrifically linked up to make it even bigger attraction for not the right reasons, but that's what happened. I would have gone to see a Crow movie, period, because I was a Crow fan. But the general public, if you'd have brought up Brandon Lee, if they knew who he was at all, they're going to know him as Bruce Lee's son. You can just base that on the numbers of the draw he was at the time. I'm not saying that would have been forever, but that's where he was at the time. And like I say, when people say, "Well, no, that movie would have been a hit even without," no, you're doing that. You're looking back. And it just doesn't work that way. I mean, I wish you were right because it's a great movie. The Crow's a great movie. And I think a lot of the talk around the Curse, Brandon Lee, it takes away from the fact that it looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful, it is beautiful, and it honors J.O. Barr's comic miniseries in ways that I consider it one of the most accurate comic movies ever made. The only thing that the Crow doesn't have is I thought they could have done it, but I can see why they did, is the Crow talking. Because the Crow is the narrator. The narrator. Oh, I can't talk tonight. It was he brings to you an understanding of what's happening, while the Brandon Lee or the person who he's bringing back is still realizing, holy shit, I was dead, now I'm alive. And when they bring him back, all these memories from their how they were killed and all that, they're still coping with all that now that they're back in the living. And the Crow is there as a guide. The Crow is there to keep them focused, because sometimes it's a woman, to keep them focused on, hey, you ain't here to fall in love with, to make attachments. You're here to kill these fools, and then that's the time you have. And once you're done, we put you back in the ground, and I fly on to somewhere else. That's the story. So I would have liked to have the Crow talk, but I think they did a good enough job. I probably did a good enough job telling you the story without it, but so I'm all right with it. Oh, we've brought this up, Azteca. We've brought this up ad nauseum. We've brought this up, how I feel about this, and it's not something I take pleasure in saying. It's just, I think a lot of people look at the Crow in retrospect. They look at the Crow in a way that I don't think we were looking back in 1993, 1994. That's a movie that most likely would have come and gone. That wouldn't have been an end of his career, nothing obviously, but it would have just been another movie in his catalog. And and he would have moved on from there to bigger things. And would it have become a cult classic? Yeah, but a lot of cult classics bomb. A lot of movies that don't do well at the initial. That's they get a following, and that's how it goes. So I don't I think the Crow would have gotten a cult, but become a cult. It is a cult classic, but I don't think that would have had anything to do with it bombing on its initial release. I mean, I just think that people didn't know who he was to that level. So Crow soundtrack is, like I said, it's I can't say enough about it. We've gone through it song for song. It's up there with Still Remains, the song that I put into the chat last Saturday. It Still Remains is but The Big Empty. That song has so many different dimensions to it for that era. It's great. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one. He died yesterday. I've only seen Big Trouble in Little China like once, and I will never watch it again.
That's a damn shame.
And but he was in other stuff too. So rest in peace. He wasn't that old.
Hey, Belruth.
Hello, Bill. What's that? Banana and
Night Owl, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm like Banana. What the fuck?
Banana Owl. David Boreanaz is the one of the crew. I was aware of that. The first thing I saw him in, because I wasn't like an avid Buffy follower. The first thing I saw him in was do you remember that movie from
gotcha.
slasher movie that slasher movie Valentine?
Which one? My Bloody Valentine?
No, just Valentine.
Oh no.
From 01, yeah, it's slasher from 01. It kind of came and went, but it's like I remember the first thing I remember seeing him in was Valentine.
Not only the Crow talking, but the Dead Cowboy. He was the original cut, and Brandon Lee had seen with them. There's pictures online. I think that's on the re-release too. Yeah, I mean, and I think what has gone on with the Crow has been criminal. What's gone on with the Crow outside of the comics has been criminal, because you could have used Brandon Lee's legacy in a way that didn't copy Eric Draven. Like I said, you know, Universal, whoever made the movie, I was giving this to you for free. You do a Holocaust survivor. I would have had a Holocaust survivor, could male or female, doesn't matter, being executed, entire family being executed at like Dachau or something like that, right? And then one of them, the Crow, brings them back 20 years later, after some of the Germans that were at some of these camps have integrated into American society via the NASA program and Project Paperclip. Because remember, after World War II, the Russians and Americans were scooping up all these Nazis because they had intelligence value. And I would have the Crow coming. I wouldn't necessarily make it a year later. You could do it a year later, but I would have that Crow coming out of that mass grave, hunting the people who executed the family. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, there's points in history that you could make a Crow out of. The one we did with the Indian, they could have adapted the one Crow Dead Space. I forgot what it was called, but it was a kitchen sink. It was excellent, and it was with the when America expanded westward and was slaughtering whole families of Native Americans, right? And then one of them is brought back to take them out. There's so many things. And that Crow, that particular version of the Crow, actually had the eagle, the war eagle, painted on his face, because that was that's what his tribe, the symbol of his tribe. So it wouldn't have looked like the white face and the white stripes and everything. Every Crow would have something that meant something to them. And you could have kept this story going on for 30 years. But no, what did we do? They tried to recapture some magic that they were never ever going to recapture. And instead of telling the story of the Crow, and see that tells me that the filmmakers did not understand the IP that they had their hands on. They were just, oh, this is the Crow that was successful, we got to replicate that. No, sit down, read a comic. And I think, dude, there's so much revenge movies out there that the Crow was literally the prototypical revenge movie. And you could have had different actors, up and coming actresses playing the role, but they didn't do that. They were so fixated on the look and feel of Eric Draven and Brandon Lee that they just sunk themselves, and it sucks. It's tragic. No, and I like the Lost Hobby strategy. No. But it's an opinion. It's an opinion. Music is subjective, but no, not for me. The Lost Boys has one of the best opening songs of any movie I've ever seen. Its sound score is better than anything else, but that opening track from Lost Boys, and it plays through the credits and it plays through the ending is awesome. Yeah. Let's see, Judgment Night soundtrack. I Am Legend. I only had 5, so yeah, I could have put that one on there. But you've had a lot of remakes of that movie too, of that book. So he left in his prime. Yeah, he was 27. I mean, he wasn't even in his prime. Brandon Lee, 28 as an actor. You're really not in your prime. You really don't reach your prime as an actor. Yeah, for most of these guys in their 30s, man.
Yeah, he was hitting a stride.
Yeah, because like I said, he wouldn't even be 60 today. He would literally be 59. He would be a modern day 59. Because like I said, these martial arts cats, they're not human in that respect. So you're because there's a discipline there. And when you have a discipline like that, it you carry it with you, and it's part of your diet, it's part of your exercising, it's part of your, And Brandon Lee, coming from the discipline that he came from, I think he would look amazing today. Obviously, he would look older, But he wouldn't look like he wouldn't look like me old. He would be looking like Bernie Hudson old. He'd be ripped up. He'd have his muscles. Anything that you see Keanu Reeves do, because Keanu Reeves is nowhere near what Keanu Reeves isn't where he is at 61, where Brandon Lee was when he died. Brandon Lee was a pure, straight up martial artist. Neo and all that. Keanu Reeves became one. He became one, starting a little bit, obviously, in the Matrix, everything. Brandon Lee grew up in that shit. Even after his father passed, that discipline, he stayed with that discipline. You could see it. You watch Rapid Fire. I mean, you watch. This guy was really good. And like I said, you see a lot of these guys on here that do this stuff, and they got their basic moves, and they're doing the Steven Seagal, broken the elbow, and doing all this stuff. And then you have some of them like Jason Statham, who is really good, but he wasn't Brandon Lee. I think Jason Statham might have lost some roles to a guy like Brandon Lee. So yeah, it just sucks when it's the consequences of death. But man, that guy. And when you looked at The Crow, you could tell he was branching out because The Crow wasn't a martial arts movie. There are some moves in there, but that wasn't a movie based on martial arts. The way he kills people and the way he fights people in there, that's not martial arts.
Yep.
He's fighting, but he's stopping knives, he's dodging bullets, he's stabbing people, he's putting arrows through people. I mean, so he was expanding beyond that, and then he's gone. It's just like, it just Speed is the exception. No, yeah, Speed, but Speed was that was where so where Keanu Reeves was, there is where Brandon Lee was when he died, in my opinion. So Keanu Reeves did the Matrix. No, he didn't. What are you talking about? He's
No, he wasn't. He was.
he's still in his 30s, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you talking about, Forth? Yeah. No. I all mine were science fiction, horror, and fantasy. So Ocean 11 is not on there for me. So, all right, guys. We're at an hour and 40 minutes, and I think that's that's where we're gonna wrap it up. I think we expanded the topic beyond just those five. But yeah, but I mean, people can come debate me and tell me that they think differently about Brandon Lee, about what kind of money with the you know what, I find it hard to disagree with you because I wish that would have been the case, but I just don't think it would have been. I think that a good majority of those people went to see for the spectacle that his death created, and it's a damn shame because you should have been going to see that movie because it was a great movie. But it doesn't always work that way. There's a lot of great movies that were being released in the 90s that nobody fucking saw. There's a lot of good movies that are released in the 2020s that nobody sees. So just because something's a great movie, it doesn't, that's like 25% of it. Which, yes, I mean, well, sorry. Yeah, she's still kind of hot. Yeah, there's a lot of great movies. Like I said, some of these things, obviously we define remake when you're talking about remake between something that's adapted from the other movie and the book. So like I said, two of mine were absolute legit remakes. The other ones were like, yeah, sort of, but for the purposes of this conversation, I figured I would throw them out there because I didn't want to think too hard. That was the whole point of putting these topics up, is to let you guys do the thinking and the discussion instead of hearing my own Kermit the Frog voice. Okay, that's it. I will not be on the air tomorrow. Not on our show. I don't know if I'll be on the podcast. Probably so. I've been lucky enough to get an invite. And hey, guys, I need you guys to like shout out, and I need you guys to go to Film Junkie, DMMS, and tell them we don't need Brad on the show with me. Go film at filmjunkie.com. We don't need Brad stealing my glow.
No, it's
we don't need Brad killing my fire.
Well, we can't have the vodka.
When I'm on a roll
with like non-Mission Impossible 2 fans.
I'm on a roll, and here comes, here's your co-host Brad. And I'm like, fuck. All right, so like I said, if I'm on the air, it'll be there tomorrow, and then Saturday, we're going to do our normal show minus the open panel. I loved everything about that show except for the last maybe 15 minutes. So look
Last
for
Saturday. Oh,
yeah,
God, man, no.
look for another show like that without
Um,
any kind of craziness. So we will be talking about a lot of things comic wise. We will be diving into some Fantastic Four stuff as we get ever so closer to that. I'm going to talk as little Superman as possible because I think we've covered it, don't you?
Yeah.
Unless something changes, unless I get some merchandise in that's directly related, like if my Funkos come in, then we'll talk about when my set of Funkos come in. We'll review the Funkos. We'll take a look at them. But right now, for the sake of just not running it into the ground, we're going to keep Superman on mute unless there's something to unmute it for. So we're going to talk a lot of comics. We're going to talk some music. We're going to talk some. We're actually going to talk some video games, not the modern day stuff. We're going to talk like the dawn of video games, like the things that got us to where we were at now, and stuff I grew up with. We might even play some classic video games on the stream if I can get it to work right. So, all right, going to 2 hour runtime. Oh yeah,
No, you're welcome, Mighty Rex.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you'll see. There's a reason why it's number one on my list.
The only unknown film that nobody's gonna know.
Oh man, it's like one of these days, like it's like I gotta introduce you, like, so you are gonna find out how wrong you are on that, my friend.
Well, you're gonna introduce me to your cabal. I mean, that's all people know.
There's way more than I can assure you that.
All right.
Legend.
All right, guys, please stop regarding these test screenings as anything other than nothing. I keep hearing news that's been spread. Well, according to the test, I give a fuck. When I hear according to the test screenings, I mute you. I don't want to hear. Those are not for us. Test screenings are not for the general audience. Their purpose is not to entertain us like the finished product does. I don't want to hear about any test screenings. I don't want to hear about any rumors that came from test screenings. I don't want to hear. They're worthless. They are worthless. The only thing I want to talk about when it comes to Superman, when we talk about Superman or any movie, by the way, is when it's the finished product. All right. So just if you're about to type anything that is derived, and I'm just picking on for it, but if you're about to type any rumor or anything that derives from a test screening, and I'm not talking about an advanced screening like we're going to be seeing on Monday night, everybody with Brad. I'm talking about test footage, test screenings, and things that are put, that are put together for a certain audience. Like sometimes you can go to a test screening and it's a scene or it's a group of scenes and there's a lot of green screen and sketches and stuff involved, missing scene here. So when we're talking about test screenings, we're talking about things that, that are still in production and before the finished product. The only thing I want to hear about Superman is the finished product. Now, if you saw the finished product and you want to give your opinion about the finished product, that's fine. Give a fuck about test screening, and that goes for any movie, by the way. I don't want to hear about test screening. There's some test screening stuff floating around for Fantastic Four. I don't care. There was test screening floating around for Dune. Don't care, because that kind of stuff is not for me. The finished product is for me. That's what I want to hear about. That's what I want to talk about. So let's I've seen people posting pictures and stuff. I haven't seen, my Walmart didn't have any. My distributor hasn't gotten them to me yet, so I don't know how many people are getting. I know I'm gonna buy some, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna try to load up on crypto. I don't care what the chase figures are. I'm gonna load up on crypto because I know that's what the kids are gonna want. So it was a little bit more. It looked like a stick in a rock, but it really wasn't. Okay, what kind of screening though? You didn't. I mean, what did you see? Like I said, they haven't even started doing the advanced screenings until July 7th. So I don't know what you guys are seeing, but ultimately, like I said, when it comes to, if you saw a like what we're gonna have, when Monday, or when we have when we see Superman, when it's the finished product. Then that's what I want to. If I want to hear from it, then that's what I want to hear from. But all these rumors and they were told to take this out and this out, I don't care. July 11th, or whenever we actually see it as a group. When I see the finished product on the screen, that's when I'll start talking about those type of things and those elements. And if somebody wants to talk about that after the fact, that's fine. But right now, all this does is open up a can of just usually bullshit. So I kind of just want to stay away from that. So, all right. That's about it. All right, we will see you guys this weekend. Have a good weekend. Have a good start to your weekend. Stay safe. Stay hydrated for those of you who live, you fellow desert dwellers. And next time I see you will probably most likely be Saturday evening for the Saturday overnight live show. Like I said, got a loaded show. Learned my lesson from last week, so we won't be making that mistake. And we'll see you later.
See you guys.